my day-to-day activities are inheritance. So suppose you have a parent class and you want to actually have a child class, so we extend the parent class into the child class to get its all the behaviors and functionality of the parent class into a child class. So basically this is is a relationship between the parent and child. So here the best example for it can be like, I have one suppose, like we usually use repositories, right? So yeah, so suppose we have to customize our own repository. So what happens is we create our own repository and we extend some predefined repository that is there into uh, you know uh, that is there. So we have like CRUD repository. We usually use the Mongo repository because here we are working with MongoDB. So like we extend the Mongo repository, so we get its behavior by default, like we get the save method, save all, find by ID, find, things like that. So this was one of the examples that we use actually inheritance into. Apart from this, the next concept we use is abstraction. So abstraction is something where you actually hide the irrelevant or irrelevant details from the client or the user. For example, for abstraction, we can basically use interfaces. Like I have a particular interface into which I have a couple of methods. Like for example, we are actually dealing with devices into this product. So like I have a device interface and I have multiple implementations. So there are types of devices, like we have 1K, 2K and 4K devices. So likewise that we have multiple implementations of the device. We are actually hiding the entire implementations of that implementation of those particular things from the user. We are just on high level showing him, okay, these are the things that are actually there into a device. So
Okay. So Nancy, just sorry to interrupt in between. Like I'll keep on asking few of the questions in between so that it's more interactive, not a monologue. Is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
So when we speak about abstraction, so what is the basic difference between inheritance and abstract classes?
Yeah, so inheritance is basically something like you have a parent class and you have a child class, and into the parent class you will have some methods that you can actually inherit into the child class. If you talk about abstract class, so that can also support inheritance. Basically, like you have a abstract class into which you can actually have abstract as well as concrete methods. So you can actually extend that abstract class into some other class to provide the implementation of the abstract methods, or maybe override the concrete methods that you actually want to override.
So when we say like implementing or when we extend abstract class, so is it a must that we have to provide definition for all the methods that are abstract? Or is it like I can leave few of the methods and utilize only which I want?
I think we can leave few of the methods and utilize only the ones which we actually want to actually provide them.
How is it different from interfaces then?
Interfaces are something that have all methods as abstract, whereas abstract class can have abstract methods as well as concrete methods. For providing the implementation of interface, we use implements keyword, whereas in case of abstract class, we use extend. We do it through that way. And apart from that, it is necessary to have like abstract methods into abstract class. Then only you can have that as abstract. So in case of subclass, basically into an abstract class, you must actually implement all the abstract methods that are there into the abstract class. Whereas all the methods in an interface are basically abstract in nature, and in case of Java 8 actually they can be default as well as static.
So what is the basic difference between them? Why do we need two different set of rules? I mean set of names. One is abstract class, another one is interfaces. When we can actually the things what they are doing is exactly the same.
So it's like in case of this abstract class, You cannot like inherit multiple abstract classes into one particular class, right? But you can do that with
Okay.
interfaces.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So now the next question that I have, another basic question. What is the difference between like public, protected, and private, and default?
Yeah. So basically,
Files.
So these are access modifiers. So if you talk about public, so that is accessible from everywhere basically. If you talk about protected, so that is actually puts a restriction on the access. It is actually accessible within a package and all the sub packages basically. If you talk
Okay.
about this private, that is accessible within the class only, and default is actually accessible within a package only.
Sure. Cool. So now the next question that I have in mind is like what is the basic difference between dependency injection and inverse of control?
Okay. So I think dependency injection and inversion of control are basically one and the same thing. Actually, I'm not able to recall. There are few additional things that are there in inversion of control. Otherwise, it is similar to dependency injection for injecting particular dependencies basically and for loose coupling purpose.
Okay, and what do we know about like this? How do we explain it? Like, what is it?
Yeah, so
What is
okay,
yeah,
please go ahead.
inversion of control? Yeah, please go ahead. Inversion of control, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, into that, we actually provide this dependency injection as part of inversion of control. So into that, basically, we use it for loose coupling. Like suppose, for example, I have a controller, okay, and I have service layers. Basically, I have a service into which I have multiple implementations of that service layer. So at runtime basically I can actually loosely couple those dependencies, and I can auto wire my this particular one particular implementation at runtime, and as soon as the container starts, spring container starts, it can actually inject that particular dependency into that particular service implementation dependency into my controller class basically.
Okay. 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 I have got another one. Like since last 5 years you have been working on Java itself, right?
Yeah.
So have you worked or any of your project had used Spring MVC rather than Spring Boot?
No, actually, we have been using Spring Boot only since.
Okay, okay. So it won't be much of a difference just for understanding purpose. So like in MVCs, what we used to do is we used to create the beans, you know, initialize the beans and all that. But here in Spring Boot, we don't need to do that. Why and how is that taken care of?
Yeah, so basically, earlier on, as far as I know, in Spring MVC, we used to have an XML where we used to actually define all the beans and provide some kind of property in name and value and constructor injection for constructor injection purpose. And then it actually used to do it. Right now, like for bean, we can use like you can use, for example, component, rest controller, these certain annotations, bean is also available. So as soon as the spring container starts, it actually the spring boot application annotation is there over your application class, which actually has component scan along with that. So it scans all the particular components that are there, and it actually creates bean out of all of them that are there on the class path basically.
Okay, okay. So in this case, like we have different annotations, right? So do you think like in Java Spring Boot it will create new beans every time, or is it a singleton bean that you have only one instance and you utilize it throughout?
Yeah. So actually, basically the default scope into Spring Boot is basically singleton. So all the beans are actually singleton, they are actually created once, and whenever you do a get bean the other time, so they are actually created once the container starts, and whenever you do a get bean it actually takes that already created bean and returns to you. Apart from that, even during the injection, basically dependency injection, like suppose you have a controller inside which you are auto wiring a service, so it will first create bean of that particular service and inject the same bean into that particular controller that you have auto wired.
Sure, sure, understood. So now, since we talked about services, right? So usually in Spring Boot, correct me if I'm wrong. So we create a service interface, and then we create a service implementation class, right? Which we call from controller, correct?
Yeah.
So usually the trend that we talk about, and when we are using or talking about interfaces, then one interface can have multiple implementations, correct?
Yeah.
So about this service class that you have created, service interface, can you implement to two different service classes the same service interface?
Yes.
Are you sure? Have you tried it?
Yeah, so basically, like if you have a particular interface and you have multiple implementations, so Spring actually auto-wires by two type. It first auto-wires by type. If suppose you have one single implementation, it will directly auto-wire by type. If you have multiple
Okay.
implementations, then there will be issues and conflicts. So in that case, basically we provide @qualifier annotation and provide into double quotes which implementation basically has to be injected.
Okay, okay. So this qualifier injection that we are doing, we'll do it in controller, or where are we supposed to do it?
Yeah, so
Because in controller, once we get the API request, we call the service, right? And when we are auto wiring, we just provide the service name, right? Which internally goes and connects with the service interface, right? Or
yeah.
does it connect with the service implementation?
So basically, in into your REST controller, basically wherever you are just auto wiring that interface, you have to provide @qualifier and the bean name. Suppose I have service IMPL1, service IMPL2. So inside the @qualifier, if I provide service IMPL1, so basically as soon as the container comes up, when it tries to create the bean of REST controller, it will check, okay, this is actually auto wiring service IMPL1. So at that particular
Okay.
time when the container is coming up, it will actually inject service IMPL1 into it. So automatically once the service is up and your request is coming onto your controller, it will automatically, that service IMPL1 bean is actually injected into it. So it will automatically call that particular bean.
Okay. Okay. So in this flow, where does this qualifier fits? Where do we put it?
Yeah, we
Like we
are.
have two implementation. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually
Please
put
go
it
ahead.
over @auto-wide above that, just @qualifier, basically
Okay.
annotation we put.
Okay. Okay. So now let's say, like, since we are talking about APIs, so let's say there is a scenario where there is this call which is coming from UI, this API, and there are three conditions that can happen. One is the call is successful. Another one is like authorized, he is not authorized, the user is not authorized. And third one, the call has failed. So what kind of response will you send? I mean, what will be your approach to solve this?
Sorry, actually I missed what you said in the first condition. Second, you said
Yeah.
authorization failed. Third one was failed. What was the first one?
So see, this API, I'll just try to repeat myself. So what happens is, like, this API is called, okay? So the first condition, there are three conditions that can happen, and this happens with any API, right? One is it's successful, right? You get the response, you
Yeah.
send it. Another one is the user who is sending this request, the client, he is not authorized to do it.
Okay.
And the third one is like there is a failure, maybe a DB failure, you are not able to fetch connection issues or something like that. So how will you handle this scenario?
Yeah, so for handling such kind of scenario, we actually do it through exception handling. Like suppose we have a controller advice basically. So I am not exactly able to recall which class we actually extend. It is I'm not able to recall that, but we actually create custom exceptions. Like for that, suppose uh, unauthorized will be something like bad request exception, which will be associated with 401 error code, giving you
Yes.
unauthorized. And like for example, some DB related, if there is some error within the service, we will actually return something like internal server error with 500 error code. If there is success, then it must, if it is a create API, it will return 201 created. If it is a suppose update API, it will return similar kind of code, like that it is there. If it is a delete, it will return 204. So basically we create custom exceptions extending the runtime exception class, and we associate at the rate response status along with that whatever status code we actually want to provide. And into our controller advice, basically what we do is we actually I'm not able to exactly recall which class is that, but it has methods like handle all exceptions, handle this kind of exception. So we can actually override those methods over there. And if suppose handle bad request is there, I can create a handle all bad request and associate like at the rate exception handler for bad request exception. I can provide the custom exception that I have created, and into that I can like for every application you should have a proper schema that has to be written to the UI. Like for example, you have the error code, error message, along with the description. You have certain things, whatever is your requirement. So you can simply create a pose over there, set all these fields into your handle message. So whenever some error comes, it will go to that particular exception handler. It will basically set all your details. Suppose there is, for example, 401 unauthorized, it will go to that particular one and then set all the details, and then you can return that to the user with specific message basically.
Makes sense, makes sense. Thanks, Marcy, for such elaboration. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Let's take a step back and talk about like what is the basic difference between string, string buffer, and the other one what we have
String builder.
builder. Yeah, string builder. What are the basic differences between them?
So
When to use what?
yeah, sure. So basically string is immutable in nature, whereas string buffer and string builder are actually mutable in nature. So in cases where you actually do not want your things to be modified, in that case we actually go for string. However, when we want to modify a string and use it with the same reference, then we go for string buffer and string builder. But there is one basic difference between the two. So I think string buffer is basically that is synchronized in nature, and string builder is non-synchronized, which means that string builder is actually not thread safe. So builder is better since it is not synchronized. It will be better in performance definitely, but you will not have thread safety. So in cases of multi-threaded environment, we should always go for string buffer, and in cases of when we have a single thread and we want better performance, we should go for string builder.
Okay, got your point. So now let's say there is a string which says like ABC, string S, which is ABC. Yeah. Now in the next statement, I say S equals to ABC plus BCA or anything, you know. So you said like what will happen? Let's go from the basics. Like what will happen in this case?
So whenever you do a string S is equal to ABC, so actually it internally checks into the string pool if this ABC is actually there in the string pool and some memory is allocated to it. If it is allocated, it will your reference S will be pointing to that particular memory that is already allocated. If it is not there, it will create a new one and your S will point to that particular memory. Now when you try to modify it, since it is immutable, you do an ABC plus BCE for example. So what it will do is, it will not modify the existing ABC. It will actually create a new memory location with ABC BCE, and now your pointer will actually be moved to point to that particular new memory location basically.
Yes. So the reference is to this new one. Yeah. Okay. So now what will happen to this ABC that we created?
Yeah, so actually if some other suppose some other pointer is actually pointing to it, some other reference is pointing to it, so in that case that will be there. If it is not there, then it will be actually unreferenced, and that will be dangling, and dangling memory location allocated. So that will be actually eligible for garbage collector. Whenever garbage collector will run, it will clear off that particular allocation.
Cool. Yeah. So how does this garbage collection works?
So
Like
basic
how does it do the cleaning? Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, there are couple of methods using which we can actually, uh, give a request to garbage collector. Actually, we cannot, force it to run at that particular time. Like we can use, I think system.gc is there, finalize method is there,
Yeah.
but that will just give it a request that okay, these are actually.
Finalize does finalize fancy doesn't trigger collection, right? Garbage collection.
Uh,
System.gc it does. Finalize will not trigger the garbage collection.
okay.
It will get triggered when garbage collection is about to happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's not the vice versa thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when this garbage collection is happening in this case, so what are the different generation that it goes through, and like how the cleaning is done?
That actually, honestly speaking, I'm not very sure of how does it do it.
Okay. Okay, never mind, never mind. There are two aspects to it. One is young generation, and another one is old generation. You can read about it. It's really you really like it. The concept is really good.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's say let's move to the JP and Hibernate. Is it okay?
Yeah, actually,
So
honestly
what?
speaking, I haven't worked on Hibernate. I have actually worked on just the JPA part.
Okay, okay. No worries, yeah, no worries. Because JPA, anyways, internally it will use the Hibernate itself
Yeah.
for the connectivity to the DB and all. So you have fetched the data, right? You have written APIs to fetch the data from. Yeah. So just give me a moment. I'll quickly share my screen to make you understand how it is. Just a minute. Are you able to view my screen?
Yes, yeah, it is visible.
Yeah, yeah. So don't get scared. This is not for you.
Okay.
This diagram is not for you.
Okay.
And a new one. Do not save. Yeah. So now the scenario is like we have table A, okay, and so I'll just open this up, make it broader. Okay, that is okay. So we have this. Okay, done. Yeah, we have table one, table A, table B, and another table which is table C. Okay.
Okay.
Now this table A is having an attribute called ID, right? And another column called A. Okay. You getting me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is in table B, I have foreign key ID underscore A, which is these two are associated, this ID and this, yeah. And we have next column as B, and we have ID underscore C, and here the column is C. Okay. Now the thing is like your API, what it will do is it will pass you a parameter, query parameter with ID.
Okay.
Okay, and you have to in response you have to provide the value of A, B, and C. Sorry, A, B, and C.
Okay.
Oops. So how will you do this?
Okay, so you are actually getting the idea of table A. Uh,
This will be IDP, sorry. IDP. Just I'll get rid of this. Rid of this. So, so this is basically ID of P. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically for the first scenario, like I'll be getting the ID in table A. So basically I can do a find by ID, because as soon as we like extend the Mongo repository or JPA repository, you can actually you get find by ID method, through which you can actually find the values corresponding to that particular
Yeah.
ID. So you will get this entity object of this basically table A with ID, and this value, whatever value is there in that particular row for column A. So if you do a find by ID on table A, you will be actually able to get whatever is that particular ID and A. And with table B, you have actually written ID underscore A. Does that mean that ID of...
These two are associated. Yeah. Yes. These
Yeah.
two are associated. And this ID is associated with this ID.
Yeah. So basically, like I got this. So you mean that ID underscore A is basically a combination of some kind of ID and value in A, basically, and then.
So what I'll do is I'll simplify it. Okay. I'll just give you a hint. So this is a reference variable to A,
Okay.
which is pointing to ID of A. And this is another reference that is pointing to ID of B.
Okay.
So these three are actually interrelated tables.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, fine. So how to? So I think if we do a find by this particular reference into B, and find by ID to this, so we will have three different entities and three different repositories for A, B, and C.
But in this case, what problem I see is like you are creating three different objects,
Yeah.
right? To hold the information from each table.
Yeah.
And then you need to create another object to associate this information ABC,
Yeah.
that you can pass as a response, right?
Yeah.
So don't you think it's a lengthier way, longer?
Yeah. Then in that
Because
case,
I don't think like this is the optimal solution. This will get the job done, no doubt. This will get the job done, but it can be more efficient if I believe.
okay. I think. Do we have like one to one relationship between these tables, right?
Yep.
Okay. In that case, I think we can do it like there can be one to one relationship, and we can have like something like join column, using which we can actually get it. We can have for example this join column, and we can have the name over there, and through which we can directly get from this just querying one
So how
particular...
does this join column works? Like how will you implement this approach? This is the right approach actually, just to boost your morale. This is the right approach. But yeah, how exactly will you execute this?
So for example, like I have this table A, table B, and table C. So there is an annotation at the rate join column, where you can actually provide this into round brackets. You can provide the name, and then you can provide the name of that particular this.
No. We are going on a wrong direction. Because if we do that, then in this case, what will happen is even when we are just fetching ID underscore B, right?
Yeah.
find by IDs underscore B. It will return an object, a DB object, with the information of B and C